Chapter 10. Investigating. We all divided up with our duties. Conrad was going to see if he could find out from the newest coroner what might be the food that was used to carry the poison which had killed Bart Baker. Ava was going to visit Jackson and find out what she could from him to help us in the investigation. We all agreed she would be there for Jackson's emotional support. Thelma was going to revive the sit-in at the police station. It was a start to raise awareness to the police that the community did not believe Jackson was responsible for the death of Bart. Once the protest was organized and in motion, Thelma would hand it over to Mabel and help in the investigation again. Bea was going to investigate around and see if she could come up with a complete list of suspects. I was going to interview the suspects we already had. First on my list was the landlord, Horace Retz. Horace owned several buildings in the downtown area of Oaks Crossing. He was known to maintain his properties to a high degree and expected tenants to pay in full and on time. I tried to schedule an appointment under the guise of looking for a building to rent, but all Horace had were a couple of apartments available at this time. I dragged Molly along, saying she was looking for a place to stay. While Molly was commenting on closet space, I was commenting on how terrible it was Bart Baker had died in the Tasty Treats bakery. Do you think you will have any trouble renting the space because of the incident? Horace gave me a sour look.
I have a renter for the business lined up for months. There's a shortage of good space in the downtown core, so I'm not worried at all about renting the shop.
Will it still be a bakery? I tried to be subtle in my questions, but was afraid I wasn't doing the best job of it. I'm opening a catering business and would like to know how much competition is in Oaks Crossing.
It will still be the Tasty Treats bakery, grunted Horace. Bart's business partner, Maurice Lalonde, will be continuing the operations. Maurice is a pastry chef.
I didn't know Bart had a business partner, I mentioned, deciding I would have to talk to Maurice as well.
You're new in Oaks Crossing, remarked Horace. I expect you don't know a lot of things.
The water pressure's very good here, acknowledged Molly as she rummaged around the kitchen. I decided to be a bit more blunt. It worked for Armand, why couldn't it work for me? I heard you had an argument with Bart in the street recently. Was it about all the money he owed you?
I heard you are a wannabe amateur sleuth, he retorted coldly. If you and your friend are done wasting my time, I have better things to do.
Obviously, Horace wasn't going to respond to a simple question. I decided on a different tactic. Jackson Grubbs is a friend of mine. I don't believe he killed Bart Baker. If you know anything which might lead to the real killer, I would appreciate it if you told us or the police.
Bart owed me money, but the last thing I would do is kill him in my building. That sort of thing gets tenants and locals apprehensive about ghosts and such. It can make a property difficult to rent out, grimaced Horace. It would make more sense for his business partner or someone else to kill Bart. Not many people liked the fellow. Besides, how would I get what he owed me if I killed him? The plan was to sue him for all the equipment inside and charge Maurice a higher rent for including the equipment when he took over the business. Now I have to wait to find out what happens to the estate to see if I can buy the stuff. Bart's making me poorer for his death.
I thanked Horace for his time, apologizing for the fake apartment hunt. I believed him when he said he hadn't killed Bart. Molly and I headed for the Tasty Treats bakery, but the scene was still taped off by the police. I wish I could have a look at the area where Bart had died. Perhaps a clue had been overlooked. However, I knew the police weren't about to give me access.
I just wish they could be done,
groused a voice beside me as a man came to stand nearby. He folded his arms, frowning at the building.
The longer the tape is up, the worse it will be to restart the business.
Maurice? Maurice Lalonde? I questioned. He had a slight French accent, was short with curly black hair and a large nose.
Maurice would be me, he nodded. Tell me, you wouldn't happen to be Ivy, the one who won against Bart for the farmer's market baking booth?
I am, I confirmed. Bart wasn't too impressed with me.
Ha! That is putting it lightly, exclaimed Maurice. He was, how do you say, hopping mad. The man is not easy to get along with at the best of times, but you made Bart terribly angry.
I'm sorry. It must have been difficult for you being his business partner, I gently pried.
Bah!
Maurice shrugged and shook his head.
We were barely partners anymore. Bart wanted different things. He was chasing fame and fortune. I am happy here with my little shop. Now Bart is dead, I can continue in peace.
I gave him a sharp look of surprise. Did you have anything to do with Bart's death? Asked a blunt Molly. Maurice looked at her in astonishment.
Moi? No, no, child. I was already in the process of legally removing Bart from the business. It was only a matter of time before he was out of my life anyways. Why should I kill? And in my store, where I hope to have customers? Bad for business it is. No, I did not kill Bart.
While it appeared no love had been lost between the former business partners, I had to agree it made no practical sense for Maurice to kill Bart if he was telling the truth. It would be very unlikely Maurice was going to kill Bart when he had already taken steps to legally remove Bart from the business.
Poison is a woman's weapon, murmured Maurice, his eyes on the Tasty Treats bakery.
You think a woman killed Bart? Questioned Molly. We didn't have a single woman on our suspect list. I looked at Maurice with interest.
I am hesitant to say, responded Maurice with a sigh. I would not like to get anyone into trouble if they have done nothing wrong.
Jackson Grubbs is in jail, and he shouldn't be. We know he's innocent. Any information you might have might help to free Jackson, I replied, gently pleading Jackson's case. Maurice thought about it before he reluctantly nodded. He pulled a framed photo out of his satchel, handing it to me.
I took it off the bakery wall. I didn't want the police to see it, but perhaps I was wrong to do so.
Molly and I studied the picture. It was a class picture, everyone wearing chef's coats. A much younger Bart could be easily spotted front and center. What are we looking for?
Fergie.
Maurice pointed to an overweight, braces-wearing, with orange frizzy-haired girl.
Marie Francesca Colander. They were in the same culinary school class.
When they were at the farmer's market, Fergie acted like she had never met Bart before, I mentioned, surprised by the revelation.
I suspect she would prefer to keep her previous life under wraps, shrugged Maurice. Fergie was worked very hard to get the image she has today. She also did not graduate culinary school as she claims. Shortly after this photo, she was kicked out of the program. I was told Bart might have something to do with her expulsion. If this were revealed to the public, Fergie could lose everything. It would be a shame if it were to happen. She is exceptionally talented.
Why was she kicked out, I wondered. Murray shrugged again, lifting a shoulder.
I am not certain. Perhaps you could ask her. The police have questioned. She and her camera crew remain in the Oaks Crossing for a few days. I think she is staying at the Bluebells for bed and breakfast.
Molly pulled out her phone. Would you mind if we took a picture of this photo? Then you can give it to the police. Maurice allowed us to take a picture of the framed photograph before putting it back in his satchel. Sighing again, he waved a hand in the air.
What a waste. Bart was extraordinarily talented, but let greed get the best of him. It is shameful.
With that said, Maurice walked away, leaving Molly and I on the sidewalk. What do you think? I asked Molly. I think we should find out how the legal battle between Bart, Maurice, and Horace is doing. Molly cocked her head to the side, twirling a piece of blue hair around her finger as she thought. If Bart was winning, it could be a reason for either or even both of them to kill him. Plus, Maurice would have known Bart's routine and where to place the poison in the most likely spot where Bart would eat it. I wish we knew exactly what had been the poisoned food Bart ate, I said in frustration. I hope Ava can find out the information from Jackson. How is it going to help us? Wondered Molly. What difference does it make to know how he was poisoned? I think it does help us to know, I insisted. If we knew for certain someone had planted the poison in Jackson's food, we would be able to figure out when and where the poisoning took place. Once we know that information, we can find out if our suspects have alibis which would prove their innocence. Molly nodded, convinced by my argument. How do we find out? The only way I can think of is if Jackson knows, then he can tell Ava, I shrugged. In the meanwhile, all we can keep doing is asking questions. Shall we visit Fergie? Asked Molly, raising an eyebrow. I think we should, I agreed. I didn't know where the Bluebell bed and breakfast was. The Oaks Crossing weekly newspaper office was nearby, so we decided to ask for directions from there. We entered the office and waited patiently for a thin young man with a pencil behind his ear to come over and greet us. Oaks Crossing Weekly, he smiled in greeting, his Adam's apple bobbing in his long neck. My name is Gordon. How can I help you? Hi, I politely responded. We were wondering how to get to the Bluebell's bed and breakfast. Would you be able to give us directions?" Gordon grabbed a small map of the town which was printed out on the back of a paper. Using his pencil, he set a mark on the map. "Right now, you are here. If you go down the street and turn left at Pleasant Avenue, the Bluebell's is right here." "Thank you," I said gratefully. "Can I keep this paper?" "Absolutely," he affirmed. "There are coupons from the local businesses on the back. While you are in town, you should check some of them out. The Sunken Oaks Diner is having a lunch special this week. Personally, I love the diner's soups and sandwiches." "I'm aware of the Sunken Oak," I replied as I took the map. "I own the Happy Camper Resort just outside of town." "You must be Ivy Thurman," Gordon said in delight. "Can I get a quote from you?" "Excuse me?" I asked in confusion. "Why would you need a quote?" "I had a person put in a complaint to the editorial section about your campground," explained Gordon. "I was wondering what your response would be." "Since I don't know what the complaint is, I can hardly respond," I noted dryly. "Here!" Gordon grabbed a tablet, bringing up letters to the editor file. Selecting the right file, he showed me the letter in question. I read the complaint, frowning over the letter. "Dear Editor, never again will I try to book a family vacation at the Happy Camper Resort. I called because there was no other campground that had an opening for my large family reunion which was going to take place this week. I had heard the Happy Camper Resort was under new management, but imagine my disappointment when a cranky old man took my call. He informed me they had no suitable sites for our large RVs unless we wanted to cut the grass ourselves. The pool was closed and so was the clubhouse. Even with all that, I was still willing to book because we had nowhere else to go for our event. Then the old man told me the owner was in jail. How awful! What is the town of Oaks Crossing coming to? Sincerely, won't be visiting again." My jaw clenched, and I thought of all the bad press this letter was going to give my little resort. "Is it true you were in jail?" inquired Gordon with bated breath as he grabbed a notepad, his pencil hovering over the paper. Molly grabbed the tablet, quickly skimming the letter. "Yes," I managed. "I was an overnight guest at the Oaks Crossing police station." "Why were you there?" asked Gordon. "You aren't going to print this?" questioned a direct Molly, putting the tablet back on the counter. "This letter is anonymous. Anyone could make a complaint, including false ones." Gordon blinked at her. "We verify the person's personal details, but take them out before printing. The letters to the editor are immensely popular section." "I can imagine," I remarked darkly, "especially when people don't have their names attached to their complaints. Personally, I don't know of anyone who tried to book at my resort for a family reunion." "Why were you in jail?" repeated Gordon as he scribbled a note. "Oaks Crossing's finest are incompetent and tend to accuse people of crimes without credible evidence," inserted annoyed Molly. "The police kept both of us overnight without charging us for anything. Then we were let go the next morning. If you were a proper news person, you would know all about the protests that happened at the police station to set Ivy free." "I thought it was a sit-in for Jackson Grubs," responded Gordon. "They have made t-shirts which say, 'Free Grub.' I guess the printer accidentally left off the S in the last name. Makes it a bit confusing for the tourists." "You see, the police have arrested an innocent man," asserted an indignant Molly. "This is your story. First they detained us for no legitimate reason. Now they have arrested Jackson while the real murderer is at large in the town. Why would you waste valuable space in your newspaper on a silly complaint when there is a dead body and a murder to solve?" "I follow up on everything," proudly declared Gordon. "Even silly complaints, as you call them." "Here's my response for your paper." I leaned in a little. "Yes, I was in jail. I was detained by the police and kept overnight without any charges being brought against me. I was released the next morning. I am unaware of this booking. However, if the author of this letter wishes to rebook the reunion, I am willing to do so at a discounted rate. Also, I can assure you the grass will be cut. Repairs are currently being made to the clubhouse, and yes, the pool is closed, but we have a lovely beach access to the lake. The Happy Camper Resort is open for business." With that said, I swept out of the newspaper office, head held high. "Oh!" growled Molly as she kept up to my quick strides. "What an annoying little celery stick he is! All crunchy but not satisfying in the least. Wasn't he supposed to do an article on who won the baking booth? I didn't see any mention of it." "I don't want to talk about it," I groused, irritated. Someone had maligned my poor little campground in the local paper. Sure, the Happy Camper Resort was not up to standards and desperately needed repairs. However, it was my home, and I had come to love the place, despite its deficiencies. A bad review could mean less business, something I needed so I could continue the repair process. "I know!" exclaimed Molly. "We'll get other people to write a ton of great reviews for your park. Then it will outweigh the one bad review." I sighed. The person who wrote the letter might have a point. Conrad isn't exactly the greatest at customer service, but he's been volunteering time at the office, so I let him continue. Plus, I need to get things repaired and updated. There's a whole list of improvements which need to be done, but not enough time. Camping season has started, and I'm behind. "Maybe all the rest of the resort can help," suggested Molly. "How?" I had a little laugh. While I know Conrad would volunteer to go fix a roof, I can't let him. So many of the jobs are physical, and as you've pointed out, I do live with a bunch of grandmas and grandpas. I love my senior citizens, and I know they would help, but it's too much for them. "Maybe not the painting, or the planting, or watering," Molly listed off some ideas. "If you have a riding lawnmower, they could take turns. What if we made up a chore chart, like parents do with little kids? We could rotate them through the office. In return, they would get a small portion off their rent, or you could give them a rent freeze since the improvements you ought to be charging more." "A chore chart isn't a bad idea," I mused, "if they will agree to it." "They want to help you, Ivy," interjected Molly. "These old people have adopted you. Why don't you see what skills everyone actually has, and then try to tap into those skills?" It does make sense, I decided. I would enlist the crew at the Happy Camper Resort to come up with usable suggestions. We walked to the Bluebell's bed and breakfast since it was such nice weather. On the way, we passed the police station, and sure enough, I could see a crowd of senior citizens all sporting t-shirts saying, "Free grub!" Someone had set up a small stage, complete with karaoke equipment, set as loud as the equipment could handle. The noise was deafening as people clapped, cheered, and sang along. Many had lawn chairs and were eating lunch while visiting. People were going in and out of the police station in a line, holding placards or banging pots and pans. Vehicles honked their horns as they drove past the parade of protesters. It was organized chaos. Thelma cheerily waved at me before rejoining the line. Molly snickered. Never mess with the G-Maws and G-Paws. Soon enough, we were at the Bluebell's bed and breakfast. A pretty wooden sign declared the large blue house a historical treasure and inn for travelers. A variety of flowers, all blue, graced the immaculate landscaping. A large wooden porch wrapped around the large Victorian. "The house is very pretty," I noted. "Sure, if you like that sort of thing," shrugged an unimpressed Molly. The inside was as immaculate as the outside. Wooden surfaces shone with care, and even the doilies on the tables were starched. A teenager in a crisp blue apron appeared behind the desk. "Can I help you?" "Hi," I greeted her. "I was told Fergie was staying here. I would like to talk to her if I could." "I'm sorry, we don't divulge guest information," she sweetly replied. "I really can't help you." "Okay," inserted Molly. "How about instead we give you a message, and you can take it to Fergie if she is here? Then you can decide if she would like to talk to us." "I'm sorry," she told us. "As I said, I can't help you." "You wouldn't even give her a note?" questioned a surprised Molly. "A lot of people have come by, believing the rumor Fergie might be staying here." With regret she spoke, shrugging her shoulders. "If I accepted notes from everyone, we would have hundreds." Molly huffed and I was stumped. How were we going to talk to Fergie if we couldn't contact the culinary star? "Thanks for your help," I said to the girl before turning away from the desk. "Or lack thereof," muttered Molly. "Don't be rude," I admonished in a hushed voice. "We might still need her help." Molly rolled her eyes, and we walked out to the large veranda. It was a nice place, I reflected, trying to think of a solution to our problem. "What are we going to do?" complained Molly. "If Fergie hides in her room, we might never see her before she leaves town. Then we'll never get to question her about Bart's death." Thankfully, no one was on the porch to hear her. A pizza delivery guy walked past us holding 4 boxes and a bag full of various cans of soda. A slip of paper fell off the top of his boxes, and I quickly picked it up, handing it to the guy so he wouldn't have to bend with his arms full. "Thanks," he grunted. "I need the room number, else the inn won't let me deliver. Celebrity guests are the worst. Before I could just drop off the food at the desk, now I have to bring it to the room, and they don't even tip well." My mind formed an idea as he went inside to deliver his food. They have to eat, right? I smiled. What if we come back with a bunch of baking? We would get to deliver it right to Fergie's room. You heard, pizza guy, responded Molly. Delivery only if you have the room number. It was on the slip of paper, I smugly replied. The only celebrity I know of in town is Fergie, which means she has to be in room 4B. Oh, then we'd better get some baking done, enthused Molly.